I think, just checking in, I think it's a 12.
Yeah, I would say a 12. I think so.
I think so.
I like.
Marty says, Simon and the Conviction Crew, I've held on to this confession for over 20 years now. It's time to let it go. We go back to the late 90s, and I'm just about to start my GCSEs at secondary school. After ridiculing my friends for all having part-time jobs, but then seeing them have nice things like driving lessons and CD Walkmans, I decided to take the plunge to being an adult and getting my first part-time job. My ambition was to work in a medical setting, maybe a doctor or a paramedic. But nothing on a 16-year-old job offerings list was close until my sister suggested I worked in the pharmacy in town. This was a good fit for me. A short walk from school, more respectable than the other jobs being offered to my young mind, and possibly great for future university interviews. The job was okay, and I was under the strict supervision of the duty pharmacist. Let's call him Mr. Z. Although I didn't expect much from my first job, I was pretty much stacking shelves and shouting out names for people, collecting their prescriptions, cleaning the shelves. As a result, I was bored out of my mind. You poor thing, Marty. Now here comes a sentence which always ends badly. Here's the sentence. Keen to do something more exciting in the pharmacy.
Okay.
I budded up with Mr. Z, who mentioned that I could help him more in the dispensary and less in the shop side of things. It was far more fun. Even unpacking the huge medicine deliveries were more fun, looking through shelves and stacks of medicines to find their home. This all came with a cool doctor's white lab coat, making me feel very important. I think this is dangerous already. Although I'm not sure whether this is totally allowed. Looking back now, there was also another element of the job that I liked. Learning all of the shortcuts on the very basic-looking computer system to print the labels with the medical instructions. I used to look at Mr. Z, who did this job effortlessly all day, tapping away on the keyboard, labels everywhere. I was much slower, but there was so much to learn. 3 times a day, only take with food, do not exceed the daily dose, that kind of thing. All very important instructions, though.
Okay.
A regular older gentleman came in, Mr. Jones, with his usual prescription for basic ailments that come with old age. I won't list them. In case your listeners go, yep, got that one.
Check.
But with a one-off request for antibiotic drops for an ear infection. I rushed up to the computer and shouted, I'll do this one, to show the rest of the customers how clever I was, actually dispensing. Handing over the prescription to Mr. Jones, I shouted, because he was hard of hearing, OK, Mr. Jones, this one is a new one. It's for your ear infection. It's to go in your right ear. The label clearly says that. It says on the label, R full stop EAR. It's a shortcut I knew off by heart. Days passed and Mr. Jones came into the pharmacy again, saying he was in dreadful pain. His ear infection was getting worse and was very uncomfortable. He didn't want to bother the doctor, so asked me what would be best. Why have you got your hand? The man has his head in his hands.
Right, so my mind has gone somewhere. Okay, cool.
I advised wisely, I think, that if the medicine was not working, you need to see the doctor again. This is wise advice.
Yes.
He smiled politely and suggested he will see him again. He also questioned the method of administration, saying it was bizarre what he had to do with the drops.
Oh, no.
But trusted the doctor and would continue. Again, I saw Mr. Jones, who came in very awkwardly a day later.
No.
Saying he'd seen the doctor and explained everything, and again had another prescription for the same drops. I found this bizarre and asked why he was having the same medicine again if it wasn't working. Well, it turns out that Mr. Jones' right ear infection was not clearing, and that is because Mr. Jones was inserting the pipette of ear oil into his bottom. I was shocked, but didn't want to upset him, so I asked calmly why this was the case. He said it was because on the label it said he should be putting it into his rear. So he continued to do so. I realised that the R for right full stop on the shop looked like it said R full stop ear, and if you put them together and if you weren't looking very good, it did indeed say that. So my forgiveness is being sought for not correcting Mr. Jones when he blamed Mr. Z, the pharmacist, And I allowed him to because I didn't want to make Mr. Jones feel embarrassed. I don't think you're going to get away with that. Anyway, surprisingly, says Marty, at the end, I'm now a fully qualified doctor and working in London. I will never use shortcuts now on the labelling, and despite explaining to the patient how the medicine needs to be administered, I will also tell them that they can and always should question something that they do not understand. I think about this often and feel bad to this day that Mr. Z took the blame. I'm hoping for salvation from my favourite station and the clergy. Well, he's trying to get in there. I'm not at all sure, Marty, you're going to get away with this. Sister, what do you think? Because I think you have to take the hard line. That's what I'm expecting.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty easy one for me, right, Marty? I can't forgive you. He came in and he was in pain. We have someone in pain here, and you had the opportunity to tell him, no, you might be getting that a little bit wrong. Maybe put it in your ear. So, Marty,
well, he thought he had said it because he put R full stop ear. So
he could have corrected him when he came back in, and he let someone else take the blame. So
he did.
No,
That's absolutely right. Brother from another guy.
I mean, is it just me, or is this is the system once again crushing the man? With the system being that the labels are clearly not big enough. If they're having to shorten down right ear to our ear, then clearly that's a problem to do with the labelling and nothing to do with Marty. In fact, Mr. Z probably did deserve the blame for that, and Marty's learned his lesson because he's now making sure that his labels are big enough. So definitely forget